Hi, today we are going to read Beverly Cleary's book, Dear Mr. Henshaw. We are going to start on page 123 and read all the way to the end at 134. Find out how this book ends. Here we go. March 31st. Dear Mr. Henshaw, I'll keep this short to save you time reading it. I had to tell you something. You were right. I wasn't ready to write an imaginary story, but guess what? I wrote a true story which won honorable mention in the yearbook. Maybe next year I'll write something that will win first or second place. Maybe that by then I will be able to write an imaginary story. I just thought you would like to know. Thank you for your help. If it hadn't been for you, I might have handed in that dumb story about the melting wax trucker. Your friend, the author, Lee Botts. P.S. I still write in the diary you started me on. From the Diary of Lee Botts, Saturday, March 31st. This morning the sun was shining, so Barry and I mailed my letter to Mr. Henshaw and then walked over to see if there were still any butterflies in the grove. We only saw 3 or 4, so I guess most of them had gone north for the summer. Then we walked down to the little park at Lover's Point and sat on a rock watching sailboats on the bay for a while. When clouds began to blow in, we walked back to my house. A tractor without a trailer attached was parked in front. Dad's! I began to run, and Dad and Bandit got out of the cab. So long! I gotta go, yelled Barry, who has heard a lot about Dad and Bandit, and who understands about parents and divorce. Dad and I just stood there looking at one another until I said, "Hi, Dad. Seen any shoes on the highway lately?" "Lots of them." Dad grinned, half a grin. Not like his old self. "Boots, sneakers, all kinds." Bandit came over to me, wagging his tail and looking happy. He was wearing a new red bandana around his neck. "How you doing, kid?" asked Dad. "I brought your dog back." "Gee, thanks," I said, hugging Bandit. Dad's stomach hung over his belt, and he wasn't as tall as I remembered him. "You've grown," he said, which is what grown-ups always say when they don't know what else to say to kids. Did Dad expect me to stop growing just because he hadn't been around? "How did you find Bandit?" I asked. "By asking every day over my CB," he said. "I finally got an answer from a trucker who said he had picked up a lost dog in a snowstorm in the Sierra, a dog that was still riding with him. Last week we turned up in the same line at a weigh scale." "I'm sure glad you got him back," I said, and after trying to think of something else to say, I asked, "How come you're not hauling anything?" I think I hoped he would say he had driven all the way back from Bakersfield just to bring Bandit back to me. "I'm waiting for a reefer to be loaded with broccoli and Salinas," he told me. "Since it wasn't far, I thought I'd take a run over here before I take off for Ohio." So Dad had come to see me just because of broccoli. After all these months when I had longed to see him, it took a load of broccoli to get him here. I felt let down with my feelings hurt. They hurt so much I couldn't think of anything else to say. Just then Mom drove up and got out of her old car, which looked little and shabby beside Dad's big rig. "Hello, Bill," she said. "Hello, Bonnie," he said. We all just stood there with Bandit waving his tail until Dad said, "Aren't you going to ask me in?" "Sure, come on in," said Mom. Bandit followed us down on the walk past the duplex to our little house and came inside with us. "How about a cup of coffee?" Mom asked Dad. "Sure," agreed Dad, looking around. "So this is where you two live." Then he sat down on the couch. "This is where we live as long as we can pay the rent," said Mom in a flat voice. And it can never be towed away." Mom really hated that mobile home we used to live in. Dad looked tired and sad in a way I had never seen him look before. While Mom fussed around making coffee, I showed him the burglar alarm I had made for my lunchbox. He worked in a couple of times and said, "I always knew I had a smart kid." Mom was taking such a long time making coffee I felt I had to entertain Dad, so I showed him my yearbook and what I had written. He read it and said, "Funny, but I still think about that every time I haul grapes to a winery. I'm glad you remember it too." That made me feel good. He looked at me a while as if he expected to see, I don't know what. Then he rumpled my hair and said, "You're smarter than your old man." That embarrassed me. I didn't know how to answer. Finally, Mom brought in 2 mugs of coffee. She gave one to Dad and carried hers over to a chair. They just sat there looking at one another over the rims of their mugs. I wanted to yell, "Do something! Say something! Don't just sit there!" Finally, Dad said, "I miss you, Bonnie." I had a feeling I didn't want to hear this conversation, but I didn't know how to get out of there, so I got down on the floor and hugged Bandit, who rolled over on his back to have his stomach scratched, just as if he had never been away. "I'm sorry," said Mom. I think she meant she was sorry Dad missed her. Or maybe she was sorry about everything. I don't know. "Have you found someone else?" asked Dad. "No," said Mom. "I think about you a lot on the long haul," said Dad, "especially at night." "I haven't forgotten you," said Mom. "Bonnie, is there any chance?" Dad began. "No," said Mom in a sad, soft voice. "There isn't a chance." "Why not?" asked Dad. "Too many lonely days and nights not knowing where you were. Too much waiting for phone calls you forgot to make because you were whooping it up at some truck stop," said Mom. "Too many boring Saturday nights in some noisy tavern. Too many broken promises. Things like that." "Well," said Dad and set his mug down, "that's what I came to find out, so I might as well be going." He hadn't finished his coffee. He stood up, and so did I. Then he gave me a big hug, and for a minute I wanted to hang on to him and never let him go. "So long, son," he said. "I'll try to get over to see you more often." "Sure, Dad," I said. I had learned by now that I couldn't count on anything he said. Mom came to the door. Suddenly Dad hugged her, and to my surprise, she hugged him back. Then he turned and ran down the steps. When he reached his rig, he called back, "Take good care of Bandit." I thought of Dad hauling a 40-foot refrigerator trailer full of broccoli over the Sierra and Rockies and across the plains and all those places in my book of road maps until he got to the Ohio. Personally, I would be happy to see all the broccoli in California trucked to Ohio because it's not my favorite vegetable. But I didn't like to think of Dad alone on that long haul driving all day and most of the night, except when he snatched a few hours of sleep in his bunk, and thinking of Mom. "Dad, wait!" I yelled, and I ran out to him. "Dad, you keep Bandit. You need him more than I do." Dad hesitated until I said, "Please take him. I don't have any way to amuse him." Dad smiled at that and whistled, and Bandit jumped into the cab as if that was what he really wanted to do all along. "So long, Lee," Dad said, and started the motor. Then he leaned out and said, "You're a good kid, Lee. I'm proud of you. I'll try not to let you down." Then, as he drove off, he yelled, "See you around," and sounded more the way I had remembered him. When I went inside, Mom was sipping her coffee and sort of staring into space. I went into my room, shut the door, and sat listening to the gas station go ping, 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 ping. Maybe it was broccoli that brought Dad to Salinas, but he had come the rest of the way because he really wanted to see us. He had really missed us. I felt sad and a whole lot better at the same time. And that's the end of the book. So, that's it. Until the next book.